to the Wellness to Wellbeing podcast with me, your host, Susanna. Join me as we explore all things being human, embodiment, trauma, somatic healing, spirituality, and so much more. Diving into what it actually means when we talk about healing, beyond the obsession with fixing ourselves and being on the never-ending quest for better and perfect. Come along on the journey from forever seeking wellness to the presence in our well-being. Welcome to the Wellness to Wellbeing podcast with me, Susanna. I am finally here doing the damn thing, recording the podcast that I have been wanting to do for so long and has been a seed for probably like 8 years. However, over that time, it has grown and evolved, and I've changed and grown and evolved, of course, as we all do. And in a way, I'm glad I waited and I needed the time to really figure out what this was going to be, what I wanted it to be, how I wanted it to serve. And now feels like the perfect time. The start of 2025, cannot believe we're in 2025. And what a way to really start off the new year than to kick off this podcast. So excited. So to let you in a little bit on what's going on in my world and just the creation of this podcast, I am someone, when it comes to technology and fiddling around with technical things, it literally kills my soul a little bit. It's just not my thing. And that has actually been a real delayer in this podcast, which, yeah, it's totally an excuse. And it's also a very real excuse for me. And actually today when I came to record, for the last hour, I have been setting up my camera because I always wanted this to be a video podcast, which it will be. That was always my plan because I also want to put it on YouTube. I really like YouTube as a space for creators, and yeah, I just think it's a great space, and I want to have video as well for when I have guests, and that's always been my vision. And for the last hour, I have been setting up my camera, putting in all the different cords and all the different things. It has like an external battery attached to it. There's something attached to my microphone, and then there's the lighting, and then everything's attached to my computer so I can see the recording happening. I mean, honestly, it's been like probably more than an hour that I've been setting all of this up. And just as I went to sit down and I was like, all right, I think I'm ready. I'm good. I have my tea. My camera shuts off and it will not turn back on for absolutely no reason. And immediately I felt the feeling of pure defeat. And I was like, heard the voice that was like, maybe I'm just not meant to do this. This is what always happens. Now I'm just frustrated and I'm not in the mood. And then I was just like, you know what? Get over it. Just do a voice recorded podcast. We'll start there and go from there. And eventually I'll get the video happening. And now I feel so much better. Sometimes you just got to let go and let God, as some people say. So anyway, with that, welcome again to Wellness to Wellbeing. As I said, I have been wanting to do this for so long and just really needed to take my time also figuring out who I am, what it is I want to do and offer just within myself and also, of course, in my business. And that has been such a journey in itself. And although it's still a journey and I'm still figuring it all out, I feel so much more inspired these days and really strong in what I have to offer and what it is that I want to share and how I want to share as well. And another block for me with creating in general for my business, and especially this podcast, And I'll speak from my experience. I always felt like, or often we think, or at least I will speak from my experience, that we need to fit into some kind of category or have a niche, which, sure, absolutely in some cases, and that's really helpful for some people. And I think it took me personally far too long to realize I don't fit into any category or box or niche, and that is totally okay. Which is also kind of the vibe of my wanting to start this podcast, of what this podcast is actually about and what I want to explore on here, the different topics I want to explore on here. Because I've always wanted to share the spectrum of my passions and interests in the way that I have wanted to. And I always felt I sort of held back because nothing felt like it really fit together or came under one niche or wasn't tied up in a pretty bow. I felt like this really, multifaceted human being, because I am, we all are. And I just didn't feel like I fit into a box. I didn't feel like what I wanted to talk about fit into a box. I wanted to speak about spirituality and healing, but in a way that felt true to me, which is a little nuanced and not so clear cut, and in ways where it's actually tangible and we can really understand it. And it makes so much sense now, but for a while that really held me back until I realized over time, that's just it. It's the messiness, it's the nuance, two truths that exist at once, contradicting thoughts and theories existing at once. That's it. That's what I want to talk about. That's how I want to express all these topics that we're talking about, because that's tangible and that's human. Is that it's not a straight line. Life isn't a straight line, and healing is not linear. And reframing like what healing actually is and how nuanced these different practices and philosophies and theories that we're talking about can be. And hopefully that really resonates with whoever is listening. I know that it really resonates with me and my own journey. So on that note, I think it's worth kind of starting this episode off with my journey and what brought me to creating Wellness to Wellbeing, why it's called Wellness to Wellbeing. And I think I would start by saying that I have been in this industry, I guess we could call it, which probably falls under the wellness industry or the healing arts or whatever we want to call it. Again, I'm not really a putting things into names or boxes kind of gal. Anyway, I've been in this industry for some time now, and I never felt like I fit. Yet I wouldn't ever want and have never, ever wanted to be anywhere else. I've never felt like I fit anywhere more in my whole entire life. Yet also I didn't. And a little about me and how I got here is that I've always been so deeply fascinated by the human experience, always. The human condition, the human mind, psychology, trauma, and spirituality, and where it can all connect as well. I have always been a deeply spiritual person in my way. And, in saying that, the word spiritual, I have quite a bit of resistance even around saying that word because, let's be honest, what does it really mean? I think it means something different to a lot of people. I think that there can be a lot of cringe around the word spiritual. I think it can put some people off because we all have something different that comes to mind when we say the word spiritual, right? And yeah, it means something different to everyone, and so it should. I just struggle to find a different word a lot of the time to describe what I mean. And so we use the word spiritual. And to me, it means absolutely everything in this existence that we're living in, and the unknown, and the mere fact of not knowing, and the vast mystery, right? Like, spirituality to me is a curiosity, a leaning in, and an openness to the vast mystery, a trust in the mystery. And whatever your practice is around that, or practices. Yeah. And so essentially for me, spirituality is my curiosity and my interest in that. And in my role in that, and in my experience in that, to sum it up as best I can, spirituality is also nature, which we are also. It's this existence, it's us, it's everything and beyond. And I say this a lot, there's so much unknown. And the more that I explore my own beliefs and just life in general, I notice the deep need as humans that we all have for control, because there is just so much vast mystery and so much unknown. And all we can do is try to find control in that, which looks like the society we're living in, essentially. And so my journey of being in this industry started with yoga. And for me, it really felt like an initiation into something that really resonated for me. I remember sitting in my first philosophy class, in my first ever yoga teacher training, and thinking, wow, I really found my place, finally. This is everything I think about inside of my own head. And now here it is. It makes sense. Like there's a name for it, and it's yoga. It's this way of life. It's this philosophy. And I finally found my place. And then I went down that path of learning everything that I could about yoga and trying to live my life by all of the teachings and practices. And when I didn't quite follow as I should be, watch out for that word should. However, in my mind, in my experience at the time, when I wasn't quite following along with this yogic way of life as I should be, I would experience shame. I became a teacher. I didn't ever feel like I fit the mold of what I pictured as a yoga teacher in my mind. So I felt shame, but also this deep desire to be all of it for years, to be that person and to really embrace that lifestyle. And it was interesting when I look back now that I was actually trying to fit into a box, although this amazing thing that I discovered, which was yoga, which was such an initiation for me, it resonated so much. I also took it on so literally as it had to be my truth. All of it had to be my truth, right? And then to sort of jump forward, I started learning about trauma-informed yoga. And then that really felt like I was dipping my toe in the right place. And then I continued on studying, working, learning, and just working with people, finding myself in spaces that felt really real and raw, and removing the fluff and the human bullshit of who we're all pretending to be and doing what we're supposed to do. That's really what it felt like. It's always felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. And so, yeah, I would say that was really my initiation was yoga, and then really going pretty quickly into trauma-informed yoga and learning about trauma, where again, learning about the human condition, learning about the nervous system, learning about us as animals, us as nature, and yeah. And just this path of knowing the complexities of being a human a little deeper, And helping others on that journey too has always felt so fulfilling to me. And just delving into the learning in this path of knowing the complexities, seeing the complexities of being a human being a little bit deeper, and helping others on their journey to find their humanness a little more. That's really always what really felt like it resonated for me. And yeah, all the while, I was trying to fit into some kind of category and never feeling like I was doing it quite right, never feeling like I quite fit in anything. And, you know, a little bit of this still seeps in sometimes, and I still experience this, although barely at all compared to before, which is hilarious and, you know, has been such a deep part of the journey. And so from here, just going deeper into the trauma work and the nervous system work, you know, learning about regulation and wellness, and so much study and insights into all the things. And really throughout this phase of my life, I would really look at my teachers and mentors like their truth had to be my truth. They know the truth, and I must live by everything they tell me. The way they are doing it is the right way. The philosophy I was studying must be right. And then, of course, when things fall out of place from what I am seeing as right or wrong, because that's really what's happening at the end of the day, I'm really looking at things as right or wrong. Boom. You guessed it. When things fall out of place of that, as they naturally do, because everyone's a human, more shame and more confusion. And so this was part of the path for me. It's actually really beautiful to reflect back on and to see, like, when I picture myself back then, I do see myself as kind of lost. And I also hold her so deeply because really I just had no trust for myself. And although everything that I was learning, and there was so much evolution in that, and the memories that I have of my life throughout the years and everything that I've done and taught and everything, I can look back now and really see that a lot of where I was at and looking at all my teachers as so on a pedestal, and what's right and what's wrong and the truth and what's not, and looking at other people around me like if they weren't, you know, thinking how I was thinking or doing what I was doing, they weren't meant to be in my life, which is just so egoic and judgmental at the end of the day. And it's just been a part of the journey, right? And so with this, I explain all of this about my journey because it brings me to wellness, to well-being, and that, you know, I've grown and I've evolved over the years. And I think to really flash forward is when I started to realize that I was, especially when I got into a bit more the personal development world, which was very much after I started studying somatics and somatic healing, somatic therapy. It was after that, and you'll hear me talk a lot more about that on this podcast. It was after that I got a little bit more into the self-development world and was a lot more around, you know, coaches, and did some really, really amazing stuff, met some really, really incredible people, some of the best times of my life. And this is when I really noticed and stopped in my tracks, where I noticed what these teachers, mentors, whoever they were telling me about myself, about the different ways in which I need to heal, about the different ways in which I need to be in my business, or, you know, whatever it may be. I was taking it as the truth. And I was taking their way of being as the only way of being. And finally, it started to dawn on me. And it actually was a moment for me when a teacher reflected back to me something about myself that was quite harsh and intense and kind of out of context. And I believed it. And I took it home with me and I was thinking about it like, wow, this must be true. This person said it. Oh my God, what does that mean? Da, da, da. Because they said it, it must be true because they're so successful and they earn all this money and da, 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 da. And then I really tapped into myself. I was meditating on it and I was like, is that true? And I was like, no, it's not. And it's so interesting that I needed someone else to tell me who I was. And I believed it. I believed it. And it got me thinking about all these different kind of obsessions I've gone through. You know, I went through the manifesting obsession. I went through the yoga philosophy obsession and the certain ways of life, which were the only ways to do it. Or, you know, I had a nutritionist that told me I must eat in this certain way and do these certain things. And that is the ultimate truth of how you be healthy. And yeah, I started to realize like that's not actually my truth. And it's so interesting that I take other people's opinions and truths as mine. What an interesting thing. And so I feel like that brought me onto a path of recovering from wellness while still being in the space and while still delving even deeper into my studies of trauma and somatics and healing. Like, let's reframe healing a little bit, you know? Let's really look at the different layers of our identity and starting to get really fascinated with the intense amount of pressure and shame and judgment I have placed on myself from drowning myself in the wellness world and spirituality and self-development world. And of course, this must resonate for other people. I mean, I know it does because I have these conversations all the time. And of course, self-development, you know, spiritual spaces or self-development, personal development, whatever we want to call it, wellness, let's say, right, is spaces to better yourself. And so, of course, these spaces bring in people that are not satisfied in some way with their life or themselves, like me. You know, I grew up from as young as I can remember, I did not like myself. I did not like anything about myself. I had no sense of self-love. I didn't think I was worth anything for a huge portion of my life. And as I got older, you know, even when I went into these spaces, that spirituality and self-development that I would do would sort of drown it out. There was a lot of spiritual bypassing going on, you know, there was a lot of this is going to save me and this is going to make me feel worthy, which wasn't actually conscious. It was subconscious. These spaces invite in a lot of us who don't love ourselves. We have a lot that we do want to change and that we do want to fix about ourselves. And there's so much gold in these spaces, in the wellness space, in the self-development space, in the spiritual laws of attraction. There's so much gold in that. You know, I'm still in it. And it really had me look at myself and be like, where is this coming from? I found myself in these perpetual cycles of fixing. You know, if it wasn't a new spiritual fad I was on, like Joe Dispenza meditations every single morning. If I miss a meditation, I'm a terrible person and I'm going to manifest all the things that I don't want in my life, right? That was a phase. And then, once I would kind of get over something, or I felt like I mastered something, there'd be something else, like with my health. Like there was something wrong with my health. I had digestive issues and I couldn't fix them. And so I went on a whole fad and paid this nutritionist all this money. Not that these are bad things. I just started to notice this. I was like, wow, I'm on a perpetual cycle of fixing. And some of us think that we're in our healing era, but I'm going to talk about reframing healing. Where's it coming from? Because if that desire to fix and change is coming from a place of I am not worthy in who I am, in what I am, and I need to change. I need to be different. I need to be a different person, rather than, yes, I can grow, yes, I can evolve, yes, I can learn more. And the attention really needs to be on accepting myself where I'm at and for who I am. And in all of my humanness and my flaws, then we're coming from a damaged place, and we're going to only end up in a damaged result, right? If we're on the perpetual cycle of fixing and trying to change ourselves and trying to be someone else, it's coming from a place of I can't accept who I am, you're never really going to get there. You're just going to find something else to fix. Because guess what? You're a human being. And if you're searching for something to fix about yourself, you will find it. We are so multifaceted. We are so nuanced. There's so many things about us. And as I always say about healing, we're not trying to reach the top of a mountain and finally you get there and you're all good. It's a spiral. It's not linear. It's not a straight line. And so that is where wellness to wellbeing came from. I started to think like, wow, this is the journey of recovering from wellness. And actually my mentor, who I absolutely love, I work with one mentor now, and she's my muse. But I don't have her on a pedestal. I just absolutely love her. And in one of our sessions one day, she was like, wow, this is like recovering from wellness. And I was like, yes, that is such a why for the podcast, recovering from wellness. And then it had me thinking, and I was like, it's interesting because there's nothing wrong with wellness, right? There's nothing wrong with wellness. Wellness means the state of being in good health, especially as an actively pursued goal. That's literally the definition of wellness, especially as an actively pursued goal. Nothing wrong with that. And well-being means the state of being content, comfortable, healthy, and or happy. And so it had me thinking like, pursuing our goals, being on a pursued goal of any type of wellness or self-development or whatever it may be, great, beautiful. I always have those pursued goals, while also learning to be content with all that I am and comfortable with all that I am and healthy and happy in that. Learning to love my flaws and the nuances about me and the differences. And the same goes for me in my work and in my business and in the way that I offer. I'm not the yoga teacher that speaks like this and is all love and light. I'm not all love and light, and I don't want to be all love and light. I'm darkness as well. And I can sit with my darkness and I can see my darkness and I can show my darkness. And it's not even dark to me. It's a part of being a human being. The ebbs and the flows, the yin and the yang, and really meeting all the nuance, all the light and dark, all the waves and spectrums of just being in our messy, imperfectly perfect humanness, and not being in that obsession with the fixing, and being on the perpetual cycle of better and more fixing and trying to be something different. And so that also really reframes healing, right? Healing is a beautiful thing, right? Healing technically means to become whole, which is interesting in itself, because that's a question to pose to ourselves. Do we not think that we're whole as we are. And when I really think, because trust me, I have asked myself so many times why the F I do the shit that I do, why I work so hard, or why I have worked so hard to heal things about me and myself and ways of being, ways of thinking. When I really think about it, I think it's because I'll speak for myself, because I want to live the richness and the fullness and the freedom of my life. I want to feel free. I want to live the richness of my life. I want to see my fullest potential as the human that I am. And that's really my why for doing the work on myself, let's say, although I find that term pretty cringe as well, but whatever, we'll use it. And again, I think that's where maybe sometimes we get it wrong. Because if it's coming from that place of I'm not whole as I am, then it's coming from a place of I need to be fixed. And there's no final solution in that, because it's coming from a place of I don't like myself, I'm not okay as I am. Whereas if healing can come from a place of I am whole as I am, how can I meet the parts of myself that I don't think are worthy, that I think are shameful? How can I meet them and hold them and see where they come from and accept myself as I am while being open and devotional to my growth, right? It's okay to also want to grow and evolve. That's also a part of healing. And I have really learned that it's also in the meeting all parts of ourselves. It took me a long time to find spaces where that was actually invited into to practice, to healing work, was meeting all parts of myself, meeting all parts of ourselves, and accepting ourselves where we're at and for what we are. Because, of course, we learn from a young age the parts of ourselves that are deemed unacceptable, shameful, the parts of us that we need to hide, the parts of us that we need to show. From there, we kind of form an identity of what's acceptable, what keeps us safe, what's not safe, and ways of being. And so healing is really that. It's really the why of it should be to really meet my fullest potential and feel the richness and the fullness and the freedom that I know I can feel, and what's in the way of that. What wounding, what limiting beliefs. And that really means meeting yourself. And so with all of that, this podcast, the intention of this podcast is really that it is a space where anyone who feels called can come. It's a free resource where we can be in a space of not one size fits all. We can explore all these different topics and different things while just being so relatable and all the way into our humanness and just being really, really real. And no matter who you are, no matter where you're tuning in from, no matter what space you're in, whether it's the wellness space, whether you're a yoga teacher, coach, you're interested in somatics, in different types of therapies, in the healing arts, whatever it may be, it's just a reminder that we can be anything and everything. And I hope that there's some resonance there in the fact that I don't fit into a box. I'm interested in what I'm interested in. And I also hope this can be a space where we can laugh. I laugh at myself all the time about all the crazy self-development things that I've done and spiritual beliefs that I have. And, you know, I'm someone who's deeply tapped into what I believe is source, and also deeply not serious on so many levels, you know, and silly. And sometimes I go out with my friends and we smoke and we drink, but I can also sit in meditation and go to a personal development workshop. And sometimes I totally lose my practice and I hate all of it, and then I come back to it. And just being a multifaceted person. And I want this to be a space for people who want to learn some new stuff, want to talk about these topics, want to talk about spirituality, want to talk about healing and trauma and shame and the challenges that come along with being a woman and being a human and all the things, but that also want to be here and just laugh along with me. You know, I hope I make you laugh. If you're not laughing, I'm definitely laughing at myself. So yeah, thank you for being here. I really look forward to making recording for Wellness to Wellbeing something more constant. And if it resonates, great. If it doesn't, leave it. Always practice discernment. And yeah, throughout this podcast, I will for sure share more about myself and what I do and my journey. But for now, I think that's it. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for being here with me and joining the conversation. If you would like to continue this conversation and find out how you can work with me further, please visit my website at www.susannasoma.com. And if you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and rate it. See you next time.